I want to talk about the non-dual nature of experience and the non-binary nature of gender. And the reason I want to talk about this is because these are two areas that I've been exploring very deeply in my life. And sometimes it's difficult to come across these two separate, disparate explorations together. I hear a lot in the kind of non-dual sphere and a lot in the kind of genderqueer, non-binary sphere. But there doesn't seem to be loads where they're together and there's an exploration. So this video is kind of new, it's different. It's going to be exploring those two things explicitly. So if that doesn't interest you, you can turn off. But if you are interested in those areas, hopefully we can explore together. So notice how I said the non-dual nature of experience. So I'm not really interested in non-duality as a subject, like a thing that we learn and learning all the terms and things like that. That's not really where my practice has been over the last 2 decades, really. But what it has been involved in is exploring and experiencing the non-dual, the not two nature of this moment, of direct experience, and the freedom that comes about from realizing this when we are able to open to the non-separate, interconnected nature of now without believing we're this fixed, separate object, subject, identity. There's a lot of freedom. There's true liberation. So you might be thinking, okay, well, we've heard about videos about non-duality before or non-dual explorations before. How does that relate to the non-binary nature of gender? And some might be thinking, well, what do you mean non-binary nature of gender? What even is that? Gender's just gender. And for me, they are really closely linked because if we're going to explore the unbound, non-separate, non-fixated aspect of experience, we need to look at those views in the world, the paradigms, the beliefs that rely upon separateness, duality. And there is none stronger, I would say, certainly in Western society, than gender binary, male, female, and that's it. That's all you get. You're either male or you're female. And it's taken for granted so deeply in our society that we rarely question it. I would say that whether you're interested in a deep internal exploration of your own gender identity or not, I think exploring the binary gender paradigm in a bit of depth can benefit everybody, absolutely everybody, because by nature that binary gender paradigm is limiting. It is, and therefore I would say kind of oppressive really. It suffocates our ability to be free and to express freely. And this is whether you identify as a male or a female or non-binary or anything in between, gender fluid, whether you've transitioned. If you fit into or try to fit into that strong paradigm of male and female, then it is by nature suffocating because it doesn't allow for flexibility, fluidity. The male and female gender paradigm, the binary paradigm, it's mind created, essentially. That doesn't mean to say gender doesn't exist. It certainly does exist. It's an expression, it's felt as well, and it is in my experience. But yeah, that rigid kind of view of what one is and what the other is, this and that, that's really kind of dependent upon, well, the times, the society in which you're born, the culture, and the prevailing kind of mindset that lives at that time. So it's all kind of mind created. And what I mean by that is, well, let's take maleness or masculinity as an example. Maleness certainly in the West looks a certain way, and that's reinforced in advertisements, in movies, in the books that we read. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it is when it's rigidly held on to, what happens when if you're assigned male at birth and you've been trying to express as a male, let's say, when you fall outside of that fixed view, then there's a lot of shame. When we feel ourselves naturally wanting to express in a way that isn't quite the typical masculine way, then we close ourselves off. We shut ourselves down. There's a message in society that says, don't be like that. If you are like that, you're not a man. You're less of a man. And apparently that's bad. That's terrible, in fact. And there's a lot of reasons why it feels so bad. I mean, it taps into our survival instincts. We may have received really harmful messages of having to be more manly, be more masculine. But everybody, and this is every single person that I've ever met, is fluid to some degree. They are not, when they're at their truest and they're expressing most freely, they cannot be confined into a rigid set of ideals and expected behaviours and outlooks. That's just not what we are. We are, by nature, and this is kind of where it relates to the non-dual nature of experience, we are not separate, we're free, we're not fixated. But when we try to fix ourselves to a very clear, rigid view of what we should be, then we suffer. And I see this suffering so often in people in the world. And these are friends of mine and family, people that identify very clearly as, let's say, cisgender, the gender they were assigned at birth. They're happy to identify as that. And yet, because those genders are so rigid and binary, when they express outside of what's seen as male or female, they feel this suffering and they have to close off their natural expression. Instead of the permission and the freedom to say, yeah, this is how I, as a man, let's say, how I want to move in the world is like this. And that might look to others a little bit more feminine. Instead of that freedom comes this, no, I can't do that. If I do that, people will think X, Y, and Z, and I will be ostracized, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I feel very deeply that whether you are on let's say a gender identity exploration, a deep one or not, I think everybody in the world would benefit from looking more closely at the gender binary, because it is limiting by definition. And those limits cause everybody to suffer, I would say. What I would also say is that actually, if you are to look deeply at it, then you're opening up to life when it doesn't fit to this and that. So a strong aspect of the spiritual path is exploring what experience is like without definition. When we're not identifying as one or the other, this or that, subject or object, then a freedom becomes apparent, a freedom that is outside of duality. And if we're to explore and investigate the binary gender paradigm, and then to free ourselves from that a little bit, that by its nature brings about freedom, and not just a freedom from the gender paradigm, a deeper freedom, because it's one of the most pervading views in the modern world. The modern view on gender, I mean, it's changing, and that's beautiful. But yeah, it has been for a long time in the Western world. It's either like this or like that. So when you get under and free yourself from deep entrenched worldviews, there's a deep liberation in that, like a very deep liberation in that. And it can point you towards a truth that is not just, like I said, beyond gender, but beyond fixation. So hopefully you can see by the way that I'm expressing, there's a real connection between, on one hand, like the non-dual nature of experience, and on the other hand, the non-binary nature of gender. And actually what you start to see and feel if you explore them both, that they are the same. They are interpenetrating. They are a fluid expression of this moment as life that is not fixated. So I hope this is helpful. And the reason I'm sharing this, excuse me, is because this is an exploration I've been on and it's been difficult. And if I was to hear other people on this exploration expressing this kind of thing, I might have found it helpful, because for the last 2 years, and this is someone who's been, invested in the spiritual path for decades, but for the last 2 years, I've been deeply exploring what it is to be gendered, to live with the gender I was assigned at birth, and whether that aligns with my true nature, my deepest expression of what it is to be alive. And what I have found on the deepest level is no, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I cannot be defined, and I will not be defined by this gender binary that is suffocating. In order to be free and to find the deepest freedom and the most loving, authentic expression of what this human living organism is in the world, I can no longer be a man. I also can't be a woman, it seems, for me. I don't want to play that gender game anymore. In fact, I cannot play that gender game anymore. And what is moving as natural expression through me is fluidity, a deep fluidity of non-fixation, neither this nor that, not male or female, but the ability to inhabit both and neither. And you can see, hopefully you can see, how this is deeply related to the path of awakening from those limited beliefs of separation, of duality, of fixation, from more natural, fluid expression in the world that, in my case, looks like this. And in your case, looks like you. But in any case, I think would always benefit from an exploration of the gender binary, and whether it's true on a deep level, whether it's true, whether it's helpful, or is it conflicting, restricting? Does it suppress our natural expression? And what is life like if we're able to free ourselves from these rigid worldviews?